Look, zero tariffs or no tariffs is the objective of Canada in negotiations with the U.S. Of course, we do produce a lot of steel in Ontario for the U.S. market. You just heard that's a big input cost, not just in the energy sector, but the defense sector, the auto sector. We also produce a lot of nickel that goes into those same areas, obviously right across the country, aluminum, potash, uranium, you name it. So our goal, working with the United States, is to get those tariffs down to zero. And when we work together, it's a win-win, and we can boost our economies. I think sometimes the targets are maybe China and some other places, not your best friend and ally, Canada.
Well, and clearly Canada is working with the U.S. to try to ratchet these down. In the interim, though, Minister, what economic impact are you expecting for Ontario, given you just pointed out your steel production? And we know the vast majority of the steel that is exported is heading toward the United States.
Well, there's no question, Kaylee, it'll have an economic impact. I just tabled a budget a couple of weeks ago that showed a slowdown in the economy, somewhat driven by tariffs and the global economy. It's affecting many economies around the world. At that same budget, I tabled $30 billion of supports. We're going to support those businesses and those workers affected by any sort of tariffs on steel, aluminum, or on our auto sector, hand in hand with the federal government in Ottawa, who's working closely with us to not only negotiate the tariffs, to get them back down to zero or as close to zero as possible, but also to provide the supports in the interim as we negotiate these deals.
Well, of course, the door swings both ways, Minister, and pretty remarkable to read that custom import duties in Canada rose 39% in the last quarter due to proceeds from retaliatory tariffs that are now rolling in to your coffers. So is this tariff thing actually working out pretty well?
No, it's a lose-lose. Look, we don't want to do retaliatory tariffs. No one wins, as you heard previously and others say. Costs go up, prices go up. It's not good for workers in the U.S. It's not good for workers in Canada. So the best deal is where we work together to land not only lower tariffs so we can trade. We have a great relationship with the U.S. We love Americans. But we win when we're stronger together. And that's not just in the areas I mentioned, but in areas like energy or right across the country. It could be in areas of manufacturing. It could be areas of critical minerals, of which we have a lot that come out otherwise from China and other places in the world. So these are the types of things we want to work on with our United States friends and have deals that are long-term.
Minister, you mentioned a minute ago the budget that you put out. When we consider your budget deficit, which I believe is the largest in more than a decade, how much wiggle room does that give you to provide financial assistance to the steel industry or any other segment of the Ontario economy that is negatively affected by these tariffs? How much runway ability do you have to do that sustainably?
We have a lot of runway. We just got upgraded by Standard & Poor's. We got upgraded by DBRS. We're unstable with Moody's. So we're doing okay on the fiscal side. I mean, a $10 billion increase in our deficit against a $1.2 trillion economy, we can absorb that quite handily. We have a path to balance, so we're one of the few jurisdictions that are balancing their books within 2 years. So I think we've got the fiscal firepower, but at the end of the day, we don't want these tariffs. We want to have a win-win with the United States, and where workers win on both sides of the border, and that we continue to have the great relationship that we historically have had with the United States.
Minister Bethlenfalvy, our viewers and listeners should know that you were a businessman and in fact know a lot about the markets. As a chief investment officer for CST Consultants, you spent time at Manulife Financial and at TD Securities. And I'm wondering what your view of the market reaction to all of this is at the moment. We've clawed our way back to essentially where we were before the so-called Liberation Day. Is the market whistling past the graveyard? How do you see it?
Well, first off, you're right. I worked here in New York for 15 years and spent a lot of time in the U.S. My wife is American, so I know a few things about the United States. Look, I think that we're not whistling Dixie. This is serious stuff, but we have a lot more strengths together than we do apart. One of the things that we're doing in Canada, I should point out, is we have free trade agreements with the G7, just every country in the G7, but we don't have complete free trade in Canada. So we're working on, this is giving us an opportunity to kind of a little bit of a wake-up call to say, hey, we got to have free trade in Canada. That could unleash up to $200 billion of economic strength in the GDP. So we think that we have a lot of opportunities. The capital markets are very strong for Canada, for our province, for our bonds and so forth. So we're in a good position, but we're very much looking at not just the short term, Joe, but also the long term, because I like to think about the long term and what we can do better together.
Well, as you discuss the long term and the other trade agreements that you have with partners, say, in the G7 or elsewhere, is it time for Ontario, for Canada, to look at other trading relationships and maybe orient themselves more toward that, diversifying away from the U.S. and reliance on this market in particular?
Well, we're doing that, Kaylee, for sure, but that's just prudent business. You always diversify your relationships and your customers, but by force of nature and geography, we are going to be very close allies and economic partners with the United States. I think renegotiating the trade agreement longer term, which is coming up next year, is going to be critically important. And again, we have all the critical minerals that the U.S. needs for their auto sector, the defense sector, for the energy sector, and we are a reliable partner in Ontario and in Canada. So we want to work together, strike long-term deals that are in the interests of both countries. I know that we've done it before and we'll do it again. And I think that's everybody wants the economic strength of both countries because around the world in this sea of instability, Canada and the U.S. are a sea of stability.
Mm-hmm. We hear a lot on this program from a lot of Republican strategists and analysts. Pay no attention. This is a negotiating tactic. The president doesn't actually want to have tariffs. And months down the road, Minister, we won't have any. From your perch on the other side of the border here, from Ontario, does that ring true? Or are you proving that wrong?
No, I think that, Trump is a business person, pragmatist. So we're pragmatists, and we want what's best for the interests of each of our countries, our workers. This environment of uncertainty is not good for either side of the border. Business and capital is looking for certainty. They're looking for places to invest, and I can think of no better place to invest, frankly, in the world than right here in North America, in Canada and U.S. And we've had a track record of being some of the best economic engines around the world right here. So I see the glass is half full, and we're business people and pragmatists, as you mentioned before, and I think we really do have an opportunity to work out deals that are going to be a win-win for both sides.
Minister, we just have a minute left, but with pragmatism in mind, is there anything you would take off the table in terms of ways in which Ontario would be willing to retaliate against any further escalation from the United States?
Well, no, first of all, I'm not at the front and center. That's the federal government in Ottawa that is responsible for that. Now, we're in constant contact with them, but I will say this. You now have both provincially and federally two governments. We were re-elected with a majority in February. The Federal Liberals Party was elected just recently in April, and on a pro-economic agenda, a pro-growth, to build the big projects, the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario, pipelines, more pipelines, east, west, north, and south. We want to move our conventional and our non-conventional forms of energy. We want to get those critical minerals out of the ground. We want to build infrastructure and transportation. So when you have a federal government and a provincial government rowing in the same direction, you have a better shot of hitting that target.